Welcome to Pimpy's Investment Chat, where we keep investment talk simple. And here's your host, Pimpy.
What is going on out there, peeps? Okay, I was wondering what had lit a fire under the butts of all the Iraqi Dinarians. People had asked me to take a look at Carl's video and then respond to it. I said, okay. Also, I'm going to respond to something that Militia Man said. And before you get all huffy and puffy, he invited me, and I'll prove it to you. So anyways, I was chatting with some people, and I said, fine, I'll go ahead and review the videos, because I know how you guys feel about me reviewing any kind of content that might be considered good news in the Iraqi Dinar community.
Oh, don't cry, are you?
Anyways, not all the time it's bad news, you guys. Good lordy. So let's get into this. Before we get started, do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button. If you're not a subscriber, please do so, because when you do, it helps out the channel, and I certainly do appreciate it. If you're thinking about buying gold and silver, head on over to our friends at Miles Franklin. The link will be down below in the description. When you make your purchase, make sure you use promo code PIMPY, P-I-M-P-Y, and they'll take care of you. If you have any additional questions, you can reach us over here at this phone number or over here at this particular email. For all orders over $10,000, reach out by email and we'll make sure that you get a great deal. So come on over to Miles Franklin and add to your precious metal inventory. All right, first things first. Militia Man asking a good question and asking me to respond to it. Pay attention.
Our investment is going to be completely different. I haven't heard anybody come back and say to militiamen and say, hey, by the way, they can fix the global financial system at 1310. And then you have to ask yourself, well, how's the development road project, the largest project in the world, going to be funded at 1310 dinar? Come on, just throw it out there, put it in paragraphs, show it, document it. I'm game.
You heard him. He's game. He invited me to respond. First of all, Iraq is not going to save the global financial system. I don't care what exchange rate it is. Making the claims that Iraq is going to try to save the global financial system with an exchange rate of 1,310 dinars, not going to happen. Second of all, the Development Road Project is not the world's largest project. It's not even in the top 20. But it is a very expensive project. So you want to see it in writing and everything else. How are they going to do the project with an exchange rate of 1,310 dinars? Allow me to respond. In this particular article, it says infrastructure spending is a focus on the new budget, which allocates development and reconstruction funds in particular areas. And then it goes through here and talks about the different projects. Sinjar, Naive, reconstruction funds of 58 billion dinars to reconstruct areas that were destroyed in the fight against ISIL. There are also 100 billion dinars allocated to Baghdad municipal government for a service project in Kirk. So they're going to have bridges rebuilt, streets rebuilt, public spaces, parks rehabilitated. They're going to have their marshes revitalized. In addition, there is reconstruction fund for the poorest provinces with 500 billion dinars aimed in improving services such as infrastructure and access to healthcare, electricity, education. This is in addition to the existing reconstruction fund for the areas that suffered from ISIS. Iraq's new budget may hamper more than it helps. As you can see right here, it says this year's budget is Iraq's largest at 198.9 trillion dinars, with the same amount being allocated for the next 2 years after 2023. And now pay attention. Pay really close attention, militiaman. This year's budget in Iraq's largest at 198.9 trillion Iraqi dinars, about 153 billion, based on the official exchange rate. Let me repeat this, based on the official exchange rate. 2024 and 25 budgets will be the same unless there is a request for any changes. So this budget has already calculated in the exchange rate. You can see this right here. I showed you this before. Railways, infrastructure, and construction, roads and highways. It's already been budgeted. There it is, $17 billion. So there, I hope that answers your question, Militia Man. You've seen it in paragraphs, articles. It's already in the projects budgeted for Iraq. What did it say in the article? with the current exchange rate. And what is the current exchange rate? 1,310 dinars per dollar. You said nobody's shown you? Now you've been shown for the 100th time. People ask me to listen to Carl over here with Currency with a Twist because he seems to have some exciting news and people are asking me to respond. I said, okay, let me hear it.
Is how many of you have read what Ariel put out? That's some pretty interesting stuff where he's talking about the Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier A2.
There's no Tier 2A. You just read it wrong. For those you don't know, this is Ariel. He's on Twitter. And he posted the official bank announcement, Basel III, capital requirements, Basel II, revaluation reserves, and he put in there the IQD, Article 8, IQD, international compliance. This is the part where everybody got all excited about. If you read this right here, this particular part of this tweet, it's this article right here. Global banks gear up for Tier 2 capital notes issuance under Basel III guidelines. And this was put out the 20th of this month. A consortium of leading banks, including BBVA, blah, 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 blah. A consortium of leading banks, including BBVA, blah, 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 blah. I'll leave a link for this so you guys can come over here and check this out. But the wording mostly comes from here. That was this one. What Carl's getting ready to read is this part. Another tweet that he was put out. So as you can see right here, Carl, Tier 2, not Tier 2A, it's a revaluation asset. That's what it is. So here he is discussing what is going to be part of this Basel III Tier 1, Tier 2 capital requirements.
So here we go. As he says, making it plain, purpose of Tier 2 reserves. Interesting. If you haven't read it, here we go. Tier 1 capital. This is the thick, strong inner wall made of things like shareholder equity and retained earnings. It's the first line of defense against financial trouble.
So Basel III has been announced since 2019. Tier 1, Tier 2 has been redefined in 2020. The only thing they did in this particular article is throw in IQD next to all these. So what did he say? Tier 1 capital. Tier 1 capital is the primary funding source of the bank and consists of shareholders' equity and retained earnings.
Tier 2 capital. This is the second wall. Not as strong as the first, but still valuable. It's made of things like undisclosed reserves, subordinated debt, and hybrid capital instruments.
Tier 2 is designated as a second or supplementary layer of a bank's capital and is composed of items such as revaluation reserves, hybrid instruments, and subordinate term debt. It is considered less secure than Tier 1.
Here's where it gets interesting. Tier 2A, revaluation asset, which is the IQD and other foreign currencies, is considered. Banks are holding meetings to help set up this safety net against the coming currency revaluation that will phase out the fiat currency, USD, by converting your IQD into this US Treasury bills that the bank will use as reserves.
Now, I guess it was, a few years ago, maybe 3 years ago, people were asking, how is Iraq going to be able to exchange the currency for US dollars? They don't hold that much US dollars. It's going to be impossible. So I did a video responding to that concern. I said, first of all, you're not understanding how this works. We don't personally exchange our currency with Iraq. What happens is if the sanctions are lifted, they reevaluate the currency. We take our currency down to our banks. We exchange the Iraqi Dinar for US dollars with our banks directly. And what happens is if that bank we're dealing with buys and sells foreign currencies, then they would keep it on their books as an asset. If they turn it over to the Federal Reserve, then the Federal Reserve would be dealing with Iraq as far as swapping the US dollar for the Iraqi Dinar. But most banks are going to keep it on their books. That's why you don't have to worry about whether Iraq has enough US dollars. It's going to be whether your bank has enough dollars. And since everything's going to be in digital, there's not going to be a problem with that. That's how it's going to happen all around the world. You're going to be able to go into your bank, exchange your IQD, and that's who you're exchanging it with. Iraq does not have to have all those US dollars to cover the IQD because banks are going to hold them on their books as assets, foreign reserve assets. Now, banks can take the foreign reserve assets and turn them into treasury bills. Yes, so this is not new news. The only thing that Ariel did was include IQD in this. So some of the wording was changed and they added some words here and there. Revaluation reserves. These are reserves created by the revaluation of an asset. As soon as you hear revaluation, everybody gets excited. They think they're talking about the IQD. A typical revaluation reserve is a building owned by a bank. Over time, the value of the real estate asset tends to increase and can thus be revalued. Now, we'll leave a link for these so you can come over here and read what everything is. See right here in this one, you can come down here and it tells you an overview. So there was a Tier 3 capital. Previously, the tiers of capital included a third layer. Tier 3 capital is tertiary capital, which means banks hold to support their market risk, commodity risk, and foreign currency risk derived from trading activities. The Tier 3 capital includes a greater variety of debt than Tier 1 and Tier 2 capital, but is of much lower quality than either of the two. Under the Basel III Accord, Tier 3 capital is being completely abolished. So like I said, I will leave the link to this article here and to Tier 1 and Tier 2 so you guys can see on your own. This news isn't new. It's old. It's been around for quite some time.
We want to thank Ariel for that. Good job, Ariel. Banking announcements. Real quick while I got you, though, I had some questions. It's been weighing on me since this happened, but how many of you guys remember when, I know you're going to laugh, you're going to be like, what is this guy talking about? And some of you are going to be like, dude, you're stupid. It's never going to happen. But I hold Zim, and I know others do, and I know a lot of you guys are going to say, oh, that was some scam that Ray ran and Tony and Mark Z concocted a long time ago. Well, I still hold it. Maybe I'm a dummy. But tell me this, guys. Tell me if this makes sense. Why would the Bank of Zimbabwe buy back the Zims 100 trillion notes for 40 cents?
That's a good question, and I know where you're going with this. First, you have to understand why it is that banks buy back old currency. Central banks are responsible for maintaining the integrity of the currency in circulation. By buying back old and damaged currency, they ensure that the money supply remains stable and that the counterfeit currency is removed from circulation. When a country introduces a new series of banknotes or coins, banks may buy back the old currency to facilitate the transition to the new currency. This helps in phasing out the old notes and coins smoothly. Banks offer currency exchange services to their customers, including buying back old and foreign currencies. This service is provided to assist customers who may have leftover currencies from travels or transactions. Old and damaged currency that is bought back by banks is often recycled or restored or destroyed in a secure manner to prevent it from re-entering circulations illegally. In some cases, banks may buy back old currencies at a discounted rate and then sell it to collectors or numismatists at a premium, thereby making a profit. So these are people who are coin collectors. They collect old money. Count to zero. Zimbabwe allows old banknote exchange. Zimbabwe Central Bank says banknotes from its old currency, which collapsed and was discarded years ago because of the runaway inflation, can be exchanged for American dollars, but 100 trillion Zimbabwe dollar will fetch you only 40 cents. This is a fraction of what collectors have been paying for the notes with numerous zeros for years. This is down here starting Monday, stacks of Zimbabwe bills that might still be kept by Zimbabwe people can be exchanged for US dollars. The offer is part of what the central bank says is an overdue plan to phase out the old currency entirely. But if you go down here, somebody down here says, I'm keeping them for my grandchildren to see. Plus, I know I will get more for them in the future because these Zim dollars are going to be in demand. And they are, if you have the right series. On eBay on Friday, 5 banknotes of 1 trillion Zimbabwe dollars were being sold for $159. Another eBay post, 5 banknotes of 100 trillion at $173. I did a video about this, telling you, look, your old Zim dollars, send them in and get it graded. If they're in outstanding shape, you can get a lot of money for them. That is one of the reasons why banks buy back old currency. So the central bank is saying they're doing it to phase out the old currency, to make room for the new currency, but also it's more valuable to collectors than it is to the banks. You can see how much money they're spending for the Zim dollars. And then Carl goes on to explain my little encounter that I had with Lowe's. So for those of you who are not aware, if you own a vacuum or a carpet cleaner, It's very hard to find replacement belts. I was in there trying to find them. They kept sending me all over the damn store. It pissed me off. So anyways, I was giving them what for a little bit. Carl was listening in. So people in the future who are trying to buy accessories or replacement parts for your vacuum or carpet cleaners, you're going to have to do it online. That's what they're saying. Anyways, I hope that helps. I look forward to hearing what you have to say. That's it for now. I'm out.